I'm Grandmaster Dennis Brown, and I'm a Kung Fu instructor. Anybody who's anybody, we've worked with them at some point. You see the guys that played the original Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, Wesley Snipes. We've worked with almost everybody. I started in 1964, so this year I'm moving into 51 years actually studying martial arts, but I've been running martial arts schools for about 45 years. I grew up like a lot of young kids in that era. I was a son of a single mom. My father passed when I was only 8 years old, so that was kind of rough. I ended up moving to West Virginia. Somewhat a hillbilly kind of life. People wouldn't believe it, but I actually grew up from 8 to about 12, 13 years old. I living in a shack beside a railroad track. No running water, no electricity, no heat, none of that stuff. We had one pot-belly stove. We grew everything we ate or hunted it or shot it or killed it. I lived like that for about 4 years before I moved back to Washington, D.C. All the things that went on in the 60s that you might imagine the early 60s was happening then. There were gangs in the area. I saw people get shot. I saw all those things going on, but I just chose not to be a part of it. Well, I went to high school here in Washington, D.C. at Eastern High School. I can remember feeling country. You know, we had those, what they call stingy brim hats, and when we walked in, right away everybody knew we were from the country. I mean, they had a term called Bammers then. You know, we were dressed in country, but we didn't know we were. We thought we was pretty slick. I was too little for football, too short for basketball, too slow for track, and to this day, I still can't catch a baseball a lot. But I stumbled into a group of guys at Banneker High School. There was Kung Fu Joe and Spanish Joe and Jimmy Yee and all these kind of names. Just a group of guys that got together, literally get in my little Volkswagen, 4 or 5 of us. We would drive 4 hours to New York, and they had 5 theaters up there that showed Kung Fu movies, double features at each one. We'd watch all 10 movies at 1 o'clock at night, drive back home to Washington, D.C., and that was our class for the next week. I was just trying to learn Kung Fu. And a lot of the stuff we were actually doing then, practicing in Malcolm X Park, because there was no school, we were just getting from Jackie Chan movies and the new Kung Fu theater stuff that was coming out. I came back and there was a point in which I realized I want to get into a real school, because you know, you guys, I love you and all like that, but my first style was anything we saw in the movies in New York. I was driving up Georgia Avenue and I saw this sign that said Lynn's Karate, but then in small print it said something like Kung Fu and Tai Chi, and I went, wait a minute, I knew what that is, I knew what that was, but I didn't think anybody else did, so I zipped in and talked to the instructor and immediately became his first student. So I have never been anything except the senior disciple. I've never been the number 2, number 5, a student in the class. From the time I joined him, I was his senior disciple. So for almost 8, 9 years, I actually helped him run his school. That school we opened up. I helped him to expand it to a larger place and ended up opening a second school for him. And somewhere around 78 or so, he decided he didn't want to do it anymore. I was faced with, well, what am I going to do? And I realized right at that point that I didn't have a choice when Mr. Lin left. All the schools were in Chinatown and were run by Chinese. So I remember when I opened my first school, I didn't even name it Dennis Brown's Kung Fu anything, because I kind of knew that, and I felt like, who's going to join a school called Dennis Brown's Kung Fu school? When I opened my first school, I didn't even name it Dennis Brown's Kung Fu anything, because I kind of knew that, and I felt like, who's going to join a school called Dennis Brown's Kung Fu school? I thought nobody would come, so I came up with this name, Shaolin Kung Fu. And I had Dennis Brown over top of it, the training center or academy at the bottom, but the central part that you saw on the sign was Shaolin Wushu, because then people would have to come in. And to be quite honest, a lot of people came in those first years. They'd walk in, they'd see me on the floor, and they say, well, we're interested in studying, we heard a lot about this school. Is the instructor in? I'd say, well, I'm the head instructor. See, yeah, I know you're the head instructor, but is your teacher here? And I'd go, well, I'm the head instructor. They go, yeah, yeah, but where is your teacher? And I said, well, I am the top instructor. And some folks would take it back, you mean this is your school? They were kind of looking behind me to see who is the Chinese instructor that runs this, because this is Kung Fu, right? I mean, how can you be the head instructor? But it was hard getting an acceptance from not so much the Chinese community, but being accepted by just everybody else. It was almost like, do you know who you are? You know you're not Chinese, right? I said, I know I'm not Chinese. You know, and I came up, remember, during the 60s. That was when I was up at Howard, H. Rap Brown was there, and Stokely Carmichael was there, and Angela Davis's time was going around. And it was that time, you know, about black and proud. And here's this guy over here, even though he got a big afro and a beard, he's over here pushing the Chinese culture, the Chinese way of life. He's pushing something that's not even that. So again, it was kind of a touch and go time, because I was constantly explaining, why are you dedicating your whole life to this Kung Fu, to this Chinese art? Why aren't you in a Afrocentric group? Not only was I in a Asian art, but I was in an Asian art that wasn't even accepted within America. And everybody knew what Taekwondo was. They knew about Korean art and Japanese art, but what is this Kung Fu thing? And again, remember, in the early 60s, there was nobody had heard of Bruce Lee yet. He hadn't exploded. And David Carradine hadn't started that series, Kung Fu. Kung Fu wasn't all that profitable. It wasn't always easy, especially in the early days. There were times when I didn't have a way to get home, so the whole week I would just stay at the school. And I'd wait for everybody to finish, didn't want people to know it, but I'd go out the door with them at night, locking up and waving everybody off. I'd walk around the block, come back into school. It's like, well, I have no choice. I can't just go get another job. This is what I do. I'm a martial arts instructor. I had jumped out on a limb and was kind of one of the first non-Chinese to open a school outside of Chinatown and open it on my own. But luckily, all of the seniors that had been with Master Lin's school for those years, from 1970 or 71 on, I had taught them all anyway. So when I opened my school, I had this whole group of folks that came with me. So I started from there, and over the years, I opened somewhere around, I've had over 22 schools, but at any given time, I had as many as 9 schools in New York, Syracuse, Baltimore. Then I had built a pretty good reputation in competition in the DC area and was starting to compete nationally. Kung Fu has taken me all over the world. I mean, I've literally been in Tiananmen Square, in Russia, I've been to Israel, I've been all over Europe, I've been in South America. I got a chance to see a China that no one will ever see, because we were the first ones in. And that's when everybody was still wearing the little Mao green hats with the matching jacket and pants, or the blue or gray, and that's it. You didn't wear anything but those 3 things. Guys were still walking around with machine guns all the time, everywhere we went. There were no cars at that time. If you can imagine a 10-lane highway, 5 on each side in front of the Forbidden City, and we're in stop traffic. Can't move traffic. And far as you could see for miles in each direction, traffic was just at standstill.